We're taking a deep dive into the 2026 gubernatorial election. There's still a little more than a year until Marylanders will cast their votes, either to choose a new governor or re-elect Wes Moore. But the race is already starting to heat up. Joining me now in studio is Senate Minority Leader Steve Hershey. Thank you so much for joining us. I understand you have some news to share.
Well, Mikenzie, thanks for having me on. I certainly do. You know, after a number of conversations with Marylanders across the state, I have taken the step today to formally create an exploratory committee to run for governor of Maryland.
What made you decide to take this step?
You know, I think that there has been quite a change in the perception and what Governor Moore is doing. And at the end of the day, I think Marylanders deserve a real choice, because we need to see balance in the form of government in Maryland. Right now, the General Assembly is leaning way to the left. We now have a Democrat governor who is experimenting with how far left he can actually get, and Marylanders want balance. And I thought at the end of the day, we need to be able to bring those issues up, have those conversations about important competing views, and see if we can end up running for governor and make an impression on Marylanders.
So you haven't announced, you're not actually running yet. You're still thinking about the idea. You're exploring the option of actually running. So you're forming this committee. And covering you in the State House and the General Assembly, I know that you have long pushed to prevent tax increases, and that was a big issue during this last General Assembly. The governor and Democrats in the General Assembly argued that they had a high bar. We heard that from the governor. He had a high bar to raise taxes. But we also know at the end of the day, this last year, that taxes and fees did go up. I want you to listen to something that we heard from the governor at the end of session. This was a conversation that I had with the governor on the final day of session. I asked him about what the end result was. Take a listen to what he had to say. People will still see the headlines with $1.6 billion in tax increases, though. Do you think that they really will be thankful for a government who is taxing them more, given the fact that we are seeing all of the other federal actions?
I think you are watching a state government that is giving the middle class a tax cut in this moment. I think you are going to watch a state government that's about to do the largest amount of cuts to a Maryland state budget that we have seen literally in over a generation.
Do you think it's fair to say that Marylanders, middle-class Marylanders, will feel a tax cut?
Middle-class Marylanders will definitely feel the increases of Governor Moore's taxes, and they'll feel the increases, obviously, when they go to register their car, purchase a new car. Governor Moore has been very good on message discipline. But the reality that everybody knows is when the governor got into office, he inherited a $5 billion fiscal surplus. Before we went into legislative session, we were at a $3 billion fiscal deficit. He spent in his first 2 years $8 billion, and there's no accountability to where that went. So in change of that, he has now increased and put forward the largest tax increase we've ever seen in Maryland, $1.6 billion. And yet he's walking around saying that he's provided tax cuts for middle-class Marylanders. Nobody believes that. And it's something for the governor to be able to continue to say that, but at the same time, that's the type of message and that's the type of conversations that we want to have to make sure Marylanders know that that's not what happened in the General Assembly, that Marylanders will be paying more and that they will see cost increase, whether it's in buying vehicles, electricity, what they see in the stores, everything will increase in Maryland. It will be more expensive to be a Marylander, to be Marylander.
And when it comes to the electricity, that's another issue that obviously you have been talking a lot about during the General Assembly and Republicans alike. Is that something that you plan to really zero in on as you continue to have these conversations? And do you hear that from your constituents as well, their concern about the cost of their electricity?
It's probably the issue that we hear about more than anything else. And what the Democrats in Annapolis have done is essentially put in a hidden tax. So from going forward with all of their radical environmental policies, they have been able to do that under the guise of higher energy costs. So it doesn't appear as though they have increased taxes, but essentially they have. And Marylanders now starting to feel it, especially in this month's bill. People are finally seeing higher rates for electricity, understanding that what we're trying to say is that these are a direct result of the policies that they've created and what's happening. So we need more reliable energy, and that's something that I've always fought for. We need it to be affordable. Again, that's something I fought for. Right now, we're dependent on Pennsylvania to get most of our electricity from. So that needs to change. We need to be able to change the environment to enhance and allow energy generators to come into the state of Maryland and produce for ourselves.
The issue of nuclear energy came up during this last legislative session, too. Where do you stand on generating more nuclear power? I know that that is a long-term strategy for the state of Maryland. Is that something that you would push for?
Well, it is a long-term strategy, and that's why the Democrats have embraced it, because they recognize that nothing soon will happen if they embrace nuclear power. Yes, we need to take a harder look at nuclear power. We also need to take a look at gas-generated electricity. We need to go back to the areas that we have the natural resources and able to produce energy. Western Maryland has a ban on fracking. We need to change that. I had legislation in this year that was going to remove that ban on fracking. We have the ability to create our own energy, to put it on the grid and make it, again, cheaper and reliable. But unfortunately, the policies that Democrats have put in place have prevented that.
Do you think that changing the ban on fracking would help you in an election? I mean, that is probably not a very popular position to take in a state like Maryland.
You know, again, I think when people look at their electric bills and recognize that there's no opportunity for electric bills to get cheaper, when they finally start to realize that we're closing 2 coal-fired plants in Anne Arundel County, that will cost more money. When they realize that we're having to build a transmission line from Pennsylvania into Maryland to bring electricity, that will cost more money. To be able to frack in Maryland and only the small parts of fracking, that's not a horrible idea. That's energy independence, and Maryland needs to look forward to that.
I want to pivot to the relationship that Maryland has with the federal government, because that is another major topic for Governor Wes Moore. He obviously, right now, the back and forth with President Donald Trump and the conversation about whether the president is going to withdraw funding for the Key Bridge. Now, that obviously would have to come from a vote from Congress, but do you think that it is a position that you would take? How would you handle the relationship with the president?
Well, again, I think what Governor Moore has done recently and what we've seen is that the governor from California and the governor from Illinois were getting a lot of media attention, and Governor Moore was on the outside and not getting anything. So all of a sudden he decided that he's going to pick a fight with President Trump. You know, again, Maryland relies so much on the federal government, not just for employment, but, you know, Maryland lost the FBI building. That's now going to be relocated in D.C. and not come to Maryland. Fortunately, President Trump just stopped offshore wind, which, again, although we need energy, that's not the right kind. That's the most expensive energy out there. And then all of a sudden, the president brings up the Key Bridge. That bridge is so vital to Marylanders and our economy that is not something that the governor should not be putting out on the table as a bargaining chip. And what he's doing right now is allowing President Trump to negotiate and to say, hey, you know what, unless you're allowing me to do certain things, the funding will not come. So I think it's very, very important that the governor has a working relationship with the President of the United States, again, because of our reliance on that. And the Key Bridge is one of those issues I think can be, at the end of the day, a real campaign issue. That's something that is going to be both sides, who can deliver the Key Bridge and who can't.
Well, speaking of the campaign, we know that if you decide to take this step and actually get into the primary, it's going to be a crowded Republican primary. We saw Ed Hale decide to swap parties, going from a Democrat to a Republican. And you had some pretty strong words for him when he decided to make that switch. And I asked him about your statement. He responded on Fox 45 News. Take a listen to what he had to say about that.
Nonsense. I hear he wants to run for governor. And I've been a conservative person ever since 1995 in terms of, you know, just my business. You sign the front of a paycheck, you are a person that becomes conservative pretty quickly.
What do you have to say to that?
He might think he's a conservative person. He might run businesses, which we do understand. But the fact of the matter is he's a Democrat, and he's still a Democrat. And as again, I was at the Board of Elections today, Ed Hale has not changed party affiliation yet. So for him to come out and say that all of a sudden I'm going to enter the Republican primary because I can't beat Governor Moore in a Democrat primary, I don't know what makes him think he can come into our party after years and years and years being a lifelong Democrat and saying at the last minute I'm going to be a Republican and therefore embrace me. Republicans are not going to do. They know the difference between conviction and convenience. And they will recognize that right now Ed Hale is looking for a party to convenience, someone to welcome him. I don't think that the Republican Party welcomes him, but that'll be a campaign issue. And if that's what we have to talk about, I certainly welcome the opportunity to run against a Democrat in the Republican primary.
So what will you make the decision? What's the timeline for you to ultimately decide I'm in or I'm out?
You know, I think what we're going to do in the next 60 to 90 days is go out and try to raise money and see where where we are and what type of support we see when it comes to raising money and being able to do that. We're also going to work on our messaging. We're going to go what we have to say, not only in a Republican primary, and again, I've been a Republican for my whole life. We've been working on fiscal discipline. We've been working on clean, reliable energy. We've been working on accessible health care and safer communities. I've got that on place. But then what we have to do is see how this messaging works against Governor Moore. I'd say right now Governor Moore is the weakest he's ever been. And it might not be in popularity. Again, he's a very charismatic guy. He does, a lot of good things out there. But in terms of the decisions he's making, in terms of what he's doing to President Trump, in terms of going out and sitting on a yacht in Lake Como with George Clooney, those are not the things that Marylanders want to see. Marylanders want to see a governor that's in Maryland, not looking as Maryland as a stepping stone, not looking to run for president. And we're going to go out, we're going to test that messaging, we're going to see where that is, we're going to do some polling. And if the polling comes back where I see that there's a viable chance, a real chance to go out and win the race, then we're going to get in it.
All right. Well, Senator Hershey, I appreciate you coming on and sharing the news first here. And thank you. We'll obviously be following along and keep us updated along the way.
I will. Thank you very much.